modern way of flying.
And I've been looking forward to this for a while.
In this series, we'll give you a first-hand glimpse into what travel is like in the coronavirus era, risking life and limb to showcase what the skies have become as airlines struggle to survive. We're hitting all the stops, from the White House
He said plasma.
to the Supreme Court to the DC Underground, literally.
Here we go.
In this episode, we're exorcising some demons in Georgetown, checking out an anti-slave ship in Baltimore, and looking behind the scenes in an urban exploration-inspired fashion at Mount Vernon, George Washington's house, as America struggles to balance a glorified past with a viral present. But first, I had to get there. I was supposed to visit MJ, who you may remember from our Days of Protest series the previous week. But at the last minute, I had to postpone my trip out of an abundance of caution when she came down with a fever. What do you guys think of that fire? Crazy there? The day I left had actually started with me sending out an article on the Newswire about the apple fire, which started in the Cherry Valley and grew to more than 15,000 acres. It was pretty impressive to see the carnage from the air, to say the least.
We appreciate your assistance. Elvis will be landing shortly.
As my landlord drove me to catch my plane, arriving just in time to get my bags checked, he told me he'd been called up to fight the California wildfires, although in the end he wasn't needed.
Man, everything's just closed almost.
I know it was the middle of the night, but even during the day, airport shopping options have been severely reduced. At one Texas kiosk, store owners didn't even bother to remove the products. They just shrink-wrapped the whole shebang. This is the only show in town right now at Dallas Airport. Who do we got on the stereo tonight?
You got Trey on the stereo, man, from the Triple D.
Yeah. It's the DJ. You're the DJ for the airport, man. See, there's like no one. There's just an overall sense of possibility and aspiration that's been severely curtailed these days. But one thing I will say is wearing a mask non-stop is a small price to pay for just how chill flying is in the COVID-19 era. Going through security was always a breeze, plus it takes like no time at all.
She got a damn room up there.
Baltimore, Washington, DC, here we come.
I feel like if you have a strong immune system and you're pretty good at mask discipline, you're basically in a new golden age of travel. Maybe. Made it to the Baltimore Harbor. Whew. It's like an anti-slave trade boat. It's like a Black Lives Matter boat. It was packed. Sadly, it's all too clear the novel coronavirus had put the board in eastern seaboard. But it was cool to see a symbol of early abolitionist sentiment not far from where protesters recently tore down a statue of Christopher Columbus and threw it in the water. Georgetown is known as being the home of many politicians and lobbyists. Down at the waterfront park, I was able to look out across the Potomac River and take in the modern tech majesty of the nation's capital. For the first time ever. For some reason, it reminded me of Austin, Texas.
Ready
Ready for the storm, bro?
I'm ready for the storm. Let's do this.
Of course, we had deeper things on the brain.
What are we looking for?
Exorcism stairs.
What is that?
The stairs where the exorcism was filmed.
Oh yeah, is there ghosts there?
I don't know, we can find out.
Like, whether or not we were living in a memory.
Now we have to make it left.
And the darkness of a treacherous staircase.
It is crazy.
Just that
That half
time
decade ago.
flies by.
Immortalized in a film from the 1970s and turned into a historical site.
That's it. That's it.
Exorcism stairs.
Can you believe people come here and they climb the stairs for workout?
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
For workouts every morning? Can you believe that?
Wow, what a workout that would be.
He got himself in what he was becomes to.
I love all the cute row houses, townhouse style. It's like super classy brick construction. Interesting spires, totally different than the kind you might see in Quebec or in Europe. It's got its own distinct New England flavor to it. It was so interesting to be surrounded by such tranquility, considering the nation as a whole is in the midst of a sometimes violent process of soul
We
searching.
get to learn about the most famous slave-owning founding father, George Washington, and see where he lived, at Mount Vernon.
Figuring out what America should become and reassessing what we've always been.
How are you?
We asked if you empty the contents of your bag into a plastic bag.
What did he ask you to do?
I gotta take everything out of my bag and put it in here.
In Washington, D.C., that's meant the defacing of the Lincoln Memorial, the World War II Memorial, and the statue of General Casimir Pulaski.
Good, they made me take everything out of here.
And days
Wanna see
later,
it? Oh,
the George Washington Monument in Los Angeles would be vandalized.
Is there a way to see the house and everything too?
Do you have a ticket for the mansion tour?
Well, it's
Or just a grounds pass?
well, I tried to do the mansion tour, but it
Well, what you do is go back out the door, turn
Yeah.
right to ticket window, see if anything's still available.
okay.
I tried to pay extra for the mansion tour ahead of time, but a website glitch prevented that from working out. Tours were carefully controlled because management obviously didn't want George Washington's legacy to involve spurring a second wave of coronavirus infections. Unlike Baltimore, which had just shut down indoor dining right before I'd arrived, you could still go out to eat in Virginia at the time, and everyone seemed to be doing what they could to keep it that way.
But why is he anchoring that thing?
Yeah, so that big lever right there operates the bellows, and it's basically just a big air pump. So that pushes air into the fire and makes that fire get to that 3,000 degree temperature. And when the metal goes into that fire, it gets heated up as well. And we usually hit the metal or squish it when the metal is between 2,000 and 2,500 degrees. So he's just thinning this sheet out and widening it.
Have you ever caught the building on fire?
For buildings that burn down, they normally catch, carpets and drapes and furniture, and those catch the building. In the 18th century, the blacksmith shop never burned down, but the carpentry shop burned down 2 times, the stables burned down, and the kennels burned down. So all places where there's lots of hay or straw or small bits of wood shavings and smaller bits of wood. Most goods were imported from Europe in the 18th century. The shop's focus back then was mostly on fixing agricultural tools and equipment.
Yeah. Are you the only people working here today, like as historical reenactors, or are there other people as well?
Well, we're not
Tuesday? Yeah, I think so.
So we're not really reenactors. We do the work.
Right.
We dress the part, but we talk about, things modern.
Right.
If you're holding a camera right now, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
There are some people here who basically are actors actors portraying people in the 18th century. Our department operates the farm, the gristmill, the distillery, and the blacksmith shop.
Oh, okay.
On Tuesdays, only the shop is operating. The farm doesn't have any people staffing it. And the gristmill and distillery aren't open yet
Okay.
due to social distancing.
Right.
But if this wasn't going on, there would be people at the gristmill, the distillery, and the farm 7 days.
One thing I learned about George Washington from the exhibits that I'd had no idea about before was that he literally made his fortune surveying for settlers and dispossessing native peoples of their lands. And according to the Mount Vernon website, when Washington became president, he was a huge proponent of depriving native people of their culture by trying to assimilate them into the Western way of doing things. And experts have noted that he spent a ton of money in office waging wars against First Nations, although I guess they did get some legal rights in the process. Actually, while some native people called him Great White Father, others referred to him, probably more accurately in hindsight, as Devourer of Villages. So I can't say I have any remorse about accidentally breaking into one of his own buildings, exploring historical artifacts behind the scenes, hidden from view of the regular public. It was pretty spooky up there. Who knows if coronavirus-infected bats were perched upside down in the corner, I was thinking. It reminded me of some of my favorite moments of urban exploration ever. It was like the US history equivalent of visiting an abandoned subway station or sneaking into a hidden ballroom for an indie folk concert. There was something so deliciously paradoxical about chilling out in the darkness above an air-conditioned greenhouse that once grew citrus and housed slaves. Because what would Washington have been without his slaves, right?
The two enslaved men, Nat and George, were the smiths that worked in the shop that stood here for most of Washington's life.
Where did they come from?
So, I'm not sure where Nat and George... They've been here for about 30 years total in their lifetime. I don't remember if they were born here on the estate or if they were purchased by Washington. I'm not sure. They were owned by General Washington, however, so whenever the Washington's will is executed, they're actually two of the individuals who are freed when Martha Washington passes away. Their spouses, however, were not. So there's basically property lines in the 18th century that divided those individuals here. And marriages had crossed over from Washington's enslaved people to the Custis estate's enslaved people. And so that's a problem that happens for a lot of families here is, the mother and the children are still enslaved and the father's freed, or vice versa.
Look at all these slave masters posing on your dollar. Get it?
I feel like on the one hand it was nice there was so few people here, which is crazy most days. On the other hand, it felt a little weird that there wasn't like that melange of Americana passing through, and just some of the stuff was closed, the agricultural area, the wharf, so, still think we got probably our $20 worth, but it would have been nice to be able to go in his house and everything, but hey, still got to learn as much as I wanted to know about George Washington, so.
Thank you very much.
And then, just after we left, we were hit with the remnants of the tropical storm we'd been anticipating. Snarl traffic on Virginia Freeway is pretty good.
Man, this rain's starting to get super heavy.
But it was short-lived and ended with a rainbow.